coming, everybody. I've been advertising this as hard as I can. We usually have our Lifelight, and many of our Lifelight people are here, but I see a lot of new faces, so that's wonderful too. I appreciate you being here. I thought about doing something different, and this started in the summertime. And I was wondering what kind of Bible study to do. And normally you'll see, like last time, the book of Isaiah we did for a whole year. We do the Light series where you did your own homework and brought it in. And we did different topics. This time I thought I would just get a little bit general and just thought to try to find a title that everybody could relate to, whether you're worried about the world events that are happening, whether they be, I don't know, political, religious, whatever, just the whole world, the economy, or if you're going through something on your own. If you're not going through something rough right now, give it a month or two, and something will come. That's the truth of the matter. So I said, why the Christian can be sure that everything is going to be okay? And so I brought that home to Carla, and she told me it isn't going to stop. Why not? She says it just seems so simple. But isn't it what we really want to know? So as I talked to her about it, though, it isn't really simple. What I'm going to try to do, since I've been known as a pastor that sometimes gets a little bit too complex and deep, I don't want to just do that because I feel like I chase people there, but I also want to bring it deep for those of you who like to do so. So I'm going to try to bring in the full spectrum. I'm going to start off with something deep just to start us off and get us revved up with this whole thing. But what we're going to do is just ask that question. And one of the things I hope you'll find is we'll come to certain conclusions, and it's kind of like what I've been doing, or I started doing this last Sunday Bible study, but there are certain conclusions that I have come up with as a pastor and just as an individual, as a Christian, and there's three main ones for me that I always keep in my head at all times, two of which I know are going to appear in here because I'm on slide 105. And I want to bring you to it too. So they're going to get complex in the things. We're going to talk about things like passive faith versus active faith. And I think some of the things I want to address is what I would suggest that we as Christians miscalculate about the scriptures. Passive faith versus active faith. We'll dive into that. And when we move to it, we're going to also deal with the problem of evil. Okay? And many people will ask what kind of question in regards to God. What might they say if they don't really want to believe in God? That's a good reason not to.
Why does he allow people to exist?
Why is evil around, right? That's a big one, right? We're going to dive into that big time and talk about evil. And it'll line back to passive faith. That's always going to be a grounded thing. And as I talk, you're looking at me and saying, what in the world are you talking about? You don't know yet, but I'm just telling you where we're going with it. And we might enter into something called predestination and the whole predestination controversy. We may or we may not. Depends how slow we go or what you think, okay, as we move through it. I want to challenge you. And one of the things I want to challenge you with is the earthly perspective and how the earthly perspective of good and salvation and getting it through the night kind of thing, how that often creeps into the gospel and what we truly do believe as Christians. The whole understanding of being saved by grace through faith, and how we mix things up. And I would suggest that every one of us as human beings, I don't care what denomination you come from or what have you, we all have a tendency, kind of like a rubber band, when we see the eternal perspective, we get stretched. But then we go back to our regular world and we integrate a lot of worldly things into our Christian faith, which really don't belong there, even though they are relevant to us in our everyday walk of life. Okay? And I want to get into that too. You're going to hear something called the economy of the world, and I'll explain that, how we mesh those into what really the saving gospel is all about. And I think what I want us to understand is, with the real true passive faith that God gives to us, and the real true segregation of the gospel as opposed to how we deal with many things in our finite life, we want to get those separated. So I'm going to start off with, in a little bit after I go through something called time and get us into an eternal perspective, I'm going to have a motivational speaker up there, and I'm going to have you listen to it. And I might offend you a little bit, but if I do, and I make a suggestion that you don't agree with, please tell me you don't agree with it and we can talk about it, okay? But we need to get rid of certain ideas, I think, that are worldly ideas of what saves us and the really eternal perspective that the gospel presents, right? So, the title is, Why the Christian Can Be Sure That Everything Is Okay. You can be completely sure. But, you know, it's kind of like when there's a thunderstorm going on, and remember that there's a little boy, he's scared of the thunder when it cracks, and he screams, "Mommy, Mommy!" And Mommy comes in and says, "Oh, don't worry, honey. You know, Jesus is with you. Go back to bed, everything is fine." Goes back, and then another boom, and "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy, I'm scared." She comes in, "Don't worry, honey. Jesus is with you. Just lay your head down." Goes back to sleep. Boom. "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." At the third time, Mommy's a little bit afraid and says, "Don't worry, honey, Jesus is with you." And the little boy says, "Yeah, but I kind of want a Jesus with skin on. Will you be Jesus for me?" And that's a profound thing that a kid might say. And I would suggest that every one of us as adults are saying the same thing, but the kid gets away with it because he's dependent on his mommy. Okay? I don't think I can go to my mommy anymore and do that. But we do go to God that way. And when we talk about a God with skin on, we're talking about the person of Jesus Christ. And I would suggest the reason why everything is going to be okay is because we have a God with skin on. All right? And the other thing we're going to move to is the person of Jesus Christ. When I say the person of Jesus Christ, what do you think? What's the first thing that comes into your mind? When I say we worship a person, anybody?
He was here in human form.
He was, yes. That's the big significance, right? And he's not a demigod, like the Greek pantheon would suggest. A limited God with skin on that wants to build a corporation here on earth. He's a God that rescues. Okay? And I want us to get to understand a passive faith, and I'll explain that as time goes on, and a God with skin on it, and we're going to also talk about some other things too. Now what I'm doing is this. I don't know where I'm going to end today. I don't know where I'm going to end next week. I've got this thing going, and I want to go through from now. Normally in Lifelight we go from now till Advent. We take a break because we have Advent services on Wednesday. Then we pick it up at the beginning of the year. We go from the beginning of the year all the way to May, or whatever. Or actually, we go all the way to Easter. And then we have Lent, right? And we'll see where it goes. But we're just going to go at whatever pace we go. So it's not lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, which is, okay? It's we're going to go from here and take the journey through this whole thing. Okay? Any questions? You guys ready to go? All right. Let's go. Okay, we're going to start by blowing your mind a little bit just to get you warmed up, okay? And what I'm trying to do now is just begin. And you notice when I've been preaching lately, I've been talking a lot, and as often as I can, by saying we need the eternal perspective. Have you noticed that by me? Somebody just told me, who it was, doesn't matter, I wouldn't say the person's name anyway, but we talked, and it was, somebody said, repeatedly, the eternal perspective. And when that happens, then I say, okay, I need to say it another 100 times than everybody, but the eternal perspective is so important. What have I been saying, hopefully, and this is going to be pertinent to what we're doing, you need the Christianity is this, always putting things in the eternal perspective and carrying your cross and following Jesus. Why? Because he made it safe. That's the point. So I always have to move from my finite worries to the eternal perspective. Carry my cross just as Jesus told me to. And understand that Jesus' cross is what made it safe. So whatever I'm going through and whatever pain or suffering or fear or doubt that I'm going through, Jesus is making it safe for me to do that pilgrimage and get to eternity. Okay? And that's what really life is all about. So, to understand the eternal perspective, I think St. Augustine in the 4th century makes this point very clear, and I think he puts it in the perfect perspective. What is time, he says. Then he proceeds to explain this. There is time past, we understand that history. There's time present, well, there's a problem with that, we'll talk about it. And number 3, there is time future. Okay? Then he continued, but the future does not yet exist. Correct? Everybody got that? Future doesn't exist. You've got plans for your future, but it doesn't exist yet. You can make predictions on your future, but it doesn't exist yet. Then the past, the past no longer exists. That's history. So everything up to 2 seconds ago, and even 2 seconds ago, and even 2 seconds ago, right? There's time past. And you can look at your photos and your videos or your memory, right? And remember that those things actually have happened, and you have to measure them by time. I was born when? In 1963. Oh, back last summer in June, you know, and you qualify your time passed by dates and times and things like that, right? Therefore, and the present takes no time at all. Now, do you understand that? We usually speak this way. We're in the present right now, so this Bible study for an hour and a half will be what? Our present, but it's not. All right? Now I'm going to explain it through a guy by the name of George Carlin. How many of you remember George Carlin? All right? Yeah. All right? Please excuse the language. George doesn't get through very many sentences without swearing, but if you excuse that part, I'm going to show you what he means by it. He explains it perfectly and comically. All right? So by this, I'm going to have to get out of the slide presentation and figure it out, so give me a second here. All right, now I'm going to at the time there, 2:40, right about here.
We don't know when the hell it is. It could be the middle of last month for all we know. I mean, time is we've got it down so perfect that every 4 years we have to stick in an extra day just to make sure it still works. And we call it February 29th. Bullshit, it's March 1st and I know it. It just feels like March 1st. You can't keep track of the time. What's the sense? Give me the time. There's a moment coming. It's not here yet. It's still on the way. It's in the future. It hasn't arrived. Here it comes. Here it is. Oh, shit, it's gone. There's no now. There's no now. Everything is the near future or the recent past. But there's no present. Welcome to the present. Gone again. It's just so imprecise. We don't even care to use the minutes and seconds and hours that we've been given. Everybody's very vague about the time. They say, what time you got? I got just after. Just after? Jeez, I must be slow. I had going on. And where did that imprecision begin? Why is it we're not so sure? I know one of the clues that happened to me was when they started telling me about moments. When I was a kid, they were trying to teach me how to tell time, and of course you can't tell time, time tells you, but they were trying. They were trying to show me. I'm a big hand. I said, I don't have a big hand, never mind. Look at the clock, and the clock is so wonderful, so much emotion attached to a clock face. I hate digital clocks. Digital clocks rob me of all the emotional experience of the spatial relationships on that face of the clock. Isn't it true? I mean, don't you always feel that this half hour, when it comes down from 12 down to 6, goes by a lot quicker than this half hour when it has to come up fighting gravity all the way? I know, it does go a lot quicker. Yeah. Oh, God, that's it. Yeah. I'll tell you this, if I only have a half hour to live, I want it to be this one, man. And it'll last just a little bit longer than that one, man. It's vague. That's all I'm saying. It's very vague how we treat time. We have all these wonderful expressions. We say now. Now is an interesting one. When? Now, you want that now? Yes. Well, would you like to try again? Or sometimes just now. Just now. Did you hear that? What? Just now. You must mean just then, couldn't you? Yeah, just then. But there it goes again. Wait, now. No. Pardon me, do you have the time? When do you mean, now, or when you ask me? This shit is moving, Ruth. We have a lot of these vague terms. Right away, immediately, at once, lickety-split, just like that, nothing flat, drop of a hat, no time at all. As quick as you can say, Jack Robinson. I'm sure you've done that to people. I'll be back before you can say Jack Robinson. Jack Robinson, hey, I'm back. How about a jiffy? A jiffy? Or a flash? Which is quicker? A jiffy or a flash? I think there are 2 flashes in a jiffy, my son. But God knows how many jiffies there are in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. And why did they use 2 shakes of a lamb's tail? What's wrong with the basic unit of measurement? 1 shake of a lamb's tail. We can do our own arithmetic, thank you. Belched a little there. Tried to swallow that. Then we have words like soon. Soon. That's a very emotional word. There's a lot of potential for drama in that word soon. 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 Is your mother coming home? Uh-huh. When? Soon. Real soon. As soon as she can. Sooner than you think. That's kind of a spooky one. Sooner than I think. That's a little bit like before you know it. I'll be back before you know it. He did it. Holy Christ. Look at that.
You get the point there? I think he makes it perfect. So he makes the point that there is no past, there is no future, and that, well, no, there's only past and future, there is no present. When time exists. See? So when you think about time, right away we're realizing that we are measuring things that way, and we can't do anything differently. We are on the line of time. Right? That's the only thing I know. How many of us understand eternity or infinity? Or what has to be really the eternal moment, if you will. Okay? We don't operate that way. Everything is based on time. And think about all the things that you do in your life based on time. You get through high school, you go to college. You know your college is going to spend the time of 4 years, get through your 4 years, right? You know, when a child's going to raise up and become part of the terrible twos, you base everything on time, and you learn from your past, but there is no present. There's no such thing as present. When you exist the way we exist now, that should tell us that we're already at a disadvantage to trying to begin to understand eternity. Does this make sense? How many of you say that makes sense? And how many of you want me to explain it a little bit better? I'm going to explain it a little bit more as we go on, okay? We'll make it a little bit. So, in other words, you can measure the past by time. right? What is this? What's this quoting? The Gettysburg Address. And you know when Abraham said this. It was November 19th, 1863, and you can understand the time in history in which he said it, and why he said it, and why it's such an important historical moment for our country, right? So you can measure the past, and you can say how many years that was when that happened, right? But when it happened always in the past. It became the past, okay? So you can do that, and we do that. We're able to do that, all right? And you can project a possible period of time in the future, and we do this all the time. The weather lady there is trying to give us a forecast of what she's predicting will happen next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It's going to be very hot, right? She's making a prediction about the future, and we don't know whether or not she is what? Right or not, because we haven't approached it yet. But there will never be a present moment in which we approach it. We just go through it by time. And then when Friday or Saturday comes, we could look at the past and find out whether Monday and Tuesday she was what? Right. Just think about all the different things we do in not just predicting our future, but what? Planning our future, right? We get our calendars. Now I do it on my, I used to do it like that. Now I do it on my phone. When you do it on the phone, right? And you have plans for the future. How many times have you made plans for the future and they came out exactly the way you expected them to? They do sometimes, right? And other times, so you're just predicting the future, and you have to make plans for the future. If you never made plans for the future, what would your life look like? It would be the ultimate what? Couch potato. You have to make plans for the future in order to start moving in the direction that needs to be moved to move, right? Make sense? Okay. But from eternity, and that's from our perspective, from eternity's reality, there is only the present. Okay. A pastor friend of mine, when we were talking about this not too long ago, and we were talking about this very thing. The one thing that time cannot measure is eternity. And isn't it interesting that when you're within time, when you're living in and what really is created time, you only know past and future, and you don't know, there is no present. But from the eternal perspective, there is only the present. It's the eternal reality. Is this making sense? And that gives us a glimpse as to why you and I, right away, when I think that way, I know that 99.9% of the time in my life, I don't operate from a what? Eternal perspective. I don't. I almost can't. I'm not, I don't have the equipment to do that, right? Do you? Except that God does call you to the eternal perspective. With that in mind, what thoughts come to your head? I know that I can reminisce about the past and I can learn from the past. And I know I have to plan for my future. Hold on to them loosely because they may happen or they may change based on circumstances that will happen in my future. But then God says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. And all these other things will what? Be added unto you. Do you have any thoughts? Go ahead, Dave.
Am I in heaven right now?
That's an excellent question. What do you think?
I heard that we are as close to hell here on earth as we're going to be, but there are people that don't believe are as close to heaven as they're going to be.
There is no evil in heaven, and we are.
And so your answer is
No.
no. Okay. Anybody else?
Paul says we are seated in the heavenly places with Christ right now.
Interesting. Yeah.
And what he means by that, I
Well-
exactly. But he says that, and it sounds like he's saying we're there now in some capacity, you know, that we are in Jesus. And he is there.
And what capacity? I think you're right. I think Paul's right. I think that's an interesting point. I'm not, can I say I'm not experiencing heaven? Or can I not?
Isn't it one of those things where we have one foot each place? As a Christian, we kind of have.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's an excellent question, Dave.
I think when I get to heaven, everybody's gonna be there. My children, my grandchildren will be there when I'm there.
Yeah, but they're here now, right? You're not your grandchildren.
All the friends and family that have gone before me, I think see me there now. If that makes sense.
Okay. Well, what, I mean, but still, that's not answering your question.
No, it's not.
No, I think you're speaking of experience, and I agree with you 100%. And I'm not physically in that place, maybe not. Let's not go into the dimensions yet, we'll get there later.
We already did, time is a dimension.
You're making, exactly, we're here in time, and your point is very important to be made. This is important. So what would it be if we are in any way connected to heaven? In what way are we?
I think we're currently living in the eternal, like nothing that we've done in the past and nothing that we do in the future is gonna ultimately define or remove us from the fact that we're already in the eternal. And it's like, I think what Mel's speaking to is kind of, and I agree with David, I feel like we're in heaven, but yet the resurrection hasn't actually happened, so the resurrection of, I think when that part comes is when we'll no longer see or experience the evil, but I do feel like we are currently on that eternal, it's an endless timeline. I mean, it's not a timeline, but, I'm not making sense.
No, you're making all kinds of sense. I think you're right. I'm looking for a word now.
Spiritual?
No, I don't agree.
That our Father who art in heaven.
Excellent. Now, the meaning behind that is you're in heaven and I'm not.
Yeah.
And therefore, yeah, absolutely.
Or you read
So-
the obituary, so-and-so died and they went to heaven.
Okay. I would suggest to you that we are connected to heaven, or in a sense in heaven, by faith. All right? That's the word. Not by experience. And we haven't experienced the resurrection. All right? So we live in time, don't we? And what do we look for? A future, right? Resurrection. But there is the whole understanding of the central doctrine of the Christian church and the Augsburg's Confessions is the doctrine of justification. And the doctrine of justification is this: you are declared what? Righteous. Right, isn't that interesting that in time I know that my past sins are all forgiven? So I do make an analysis about my past, and that is all the bad things I've done or thought, they're gone. They're erased from it, right? And also, because of it, my future is secure, which is a point we want to get to when we're asking about why is everything okay? So that's an excellent point. All right, as I'm moving and there is no now, I'm living it. But in relationship to time, you know that, okay? Always remember that the Word of God is transcendent, isn't it? Think about God as big as He is, as all-knowing, all-powerful, all-wise God is trying to explain to you through His Word who He is, and how much of it can you actually handle when you're, number one, a sinful, finite human being, and sinful is a big thing, and that causes us a lot of blindness, and the fact that we are finite and time, this whole thing, right? Just a little. So you just said that based on the perspective of time, because that's the only thing you can do, right? But your faith looks to the eternal, right? So in faith, I would suggest I am. And I would suggest also in faith, you and I are part of the body of Christ. Now, all right, you mentioned in the future with your kids and all that, you'll know them better then because you'll be without sin. But right now, God says that you're a fellowship now within the church as we gather around God's word and the sacraments, right? Okay? And that's an excellent question because it makes the point. So the point is, you just introduced, and everybody's talking and struggling with the barrier that we do have. And that's because we're living in, well, that's not the whole reason, but we are living in time. We're also never going to be infinite God or close. I would suggest we'll forever be learning about God even in heaven, right? Because we're never going to be God. But right away, what I'm trying to do here is say, yeah, I understand why I struggle every day, because every day I have my schedule and I got to do my things, and I'm worried about my loved ones and so on and so forth based on time and things like that. I hope that my kids all have a future, you know. 2 of them are now here, and I got 1 more in college, and I hope he launches off in whatever he decides to do and what have you. We all live and breathe that way, right? And so that means if all I am thinking about is what's happening in my time, and that's where my faith lies, and I don't have an eternal perspective, what does that do when things go wrong? Or things don't go as you planned? It what? Causes a huge what? Disappointment. It always will. Right? So how important is the eternal perspective? Well, right away what I'm trying to tell you is that's where we are. Very interesting, if you go to the very beginning of the Bible, God places Adam and Eve in the garden, right? And Luther and many other theologians would suggest, I think they're right on that whole thing with the garden was a test for to see whether man was going to obey God or not. So, he created time. In fact, I think that's the next slide, okay? Yeah, and science has discovered this. You know, study Einstein. His theory, it has been posited by science that time and space is a created thing. And this, I'm not going to go into any controversies about proposed Big Bang or whatever, but, because I don't buy the entire Big Bang, but there was a beginning to matter, right? The Bible says that. In the beginning what? Yeah, you know, it's not in the beginning, this is God. God, this is what God does. That's what the Bible says. So in the beginning, God created, and how he does. He forms matter by his word, and then he shapes it, and he does his thing. So, yeah, science and the Bible conclude that time is a created thing. Very interesting to me. One of those times where I go, wow, that's pretty cool. Yep.
What do they mean by that?
That is created?
Yeah, I mean, are you talking like man throughout the ages has called times different things, seasons, calendars, watches, clocks, began